Okay, so this is question number 2 from the practice. Right now it's showing a 34% accuracy, which is not very high. And I think it's just because we're getting stuck on a few of the details from our notes. So it says, what is or are the solution or solutions of the equation? And we have the equation x squared equals 36 over 64. So we are squaring a value. We don't know what value that is. The inverse operation of squaring a value is square root or cube root. Okay, so think about what you're seeing. If you have a value squared, the inverse is a square root, which we talked about as an understood 2 here. We just don't write that index. And so if we're cubing a value or raising it to the 3rd power, what is the inverse operation of that? Cube root. Okay, so thinking about that, when you see a 2, do a square root. When you see a 3 as the exponent, do a cube root. Okay, so now this is squared, so that's a 2 as an exponent. So the inverse operation would be to take the square root. Now I'm going to rewrite this and show you, if you were doing this manually, you would show that you're taking the square root of both sides. Square roots are opposites or inverses, so they cancel. And so what we're finding out is, what is that value x? Well, what is the square root of 36 over 64? You can type that directly into your calculator. So the square root of 36 and the square root of 64 is going to be 6 over 8, which simplifies on your calculator to 3/4. Okay? And so we're getting a lot of this is the answer, right? That's actually incorrect. And the reason why is because we talked about this earlier this week in the notes, but whenever you square a value, a positive times a positive will give you that number, but also a negative times a negative will give you that number. So anytime you take the square root of a value, you get a positive or a negative version, okay? So x is going to equal 3/4, or x could possibly be negative 3 over 4. So only square roots have 2 possible answers. That's the only one that's going to happen on. So the correct answer on this one is answer choice B. So a lot of us probably marked D without thinking about what we talked about. It could be a positive or a negative. Okay, the other most missed problem in the practice was that very last question, question 10. On question 10, it's kind of the same idea here. Okay, it says which expressions will have 2 answers, okay? So in other words, think about if when you solve it, would you be taking a cube root or a square root? Okay, so to solve this one, it's being cubed. What's the inverse operation? Cube root, okay? For this one, it's squared, so you would take the square root. For this one, it's squared, so you would take the square root. And for this one, it's cubed, and you would take the cube root. Now, earlier I said the only one that will have a positive and a negative answer will be square roots. So the correct answer is going to be B and C, because they are both either have a negative version or a positive version of their answer. So it's going to be positive or negative, and whatever the square root of that number is. So this one's positive or negative square root of 49, which is 7. Okay, so there's 2 answers for B and C. A and D are cube roots, which means they're only going to have 1 answer. So on question 10, you should have selected B and C. There's one other problem that seems to be kind of low. It's not very low. It's like 83% accuracy, question 6. Okay, and it says, what is or are the solution or solutions of the equation x to the 3rd equals 125? Okay, so this is to the third power, which means cubed, right? What's the inverse operation of cubing a number? Cube root. So it's to the third root, right? So this cancels, that's why it works. So x equals the cube root of 125, and the cube root of 125 is 5. Is there a negative version of that? No, because it's cubed. So it's just x equals 5 only. So it's answer choice C.